Close your eyes. Let the noise of your world fade away, replaced by the slow, rhythmic crackle of a distant fire. You are not where you were a moment ago. The air you breathe is different now, thick with the scent of damp stone, wood smoke, and something ancient, like dust in forgotten time. You can feel a profound chill that has nothing to do with a modern thermostat, and everything to do with thick, unyielding castle walls that have seen centuries of silent sunrises. It is morning, but the light that filters through the narrow, leaded glass of your window is a reluctant, watery gray. It does little to warm the heavy, fur-lined blanket pulled up to your chin, or the rough-spun linen of your nightgown against your skin. This is your world, a place where time is measured not by clocks, but by the slow turning of seasons and the tolling of a distant chapel bell. You are a girl, but the word feels fragile, temporary, like a costume you are soon to shed. Your childhood is not measured in years or celebrated with cakes and candles. It is a waiting game, a long, quiet inhale before a life-altering plunge. Every morning is a rehearsal for a future that has already been written for you, a contract signed in ink by your father's hand long before you could even form a word. You are a promise, a living, breathing piece of a political treaty. You are an asset, and assets must be monitored. The women who tend to you, their hands calloused and their faces impassive, they watch you. They look for the signs, the quiet, inevitable signal from your own body that your time as a child is officially over. A milestone that in your world is not a private matter, but a public announcement. The day begins. A servant girl, not much older than you, coaxes the embers in the hearth back to life. The first real warmth you feel is on your face as you sit before the fledgling fire, your bare feet cold on the stone floor, which is strewn with stale, crushed herbs meant to mask the smells of unwashed bodies and dampness. They don't entirely succeed. You are dressed in layers, a slow, methodical process that feels less like getting ready, and more like being armed for a battle you don't understand. The linen chemise, the heavy wool kirtle, the over-tunic laced so tightly it reminds you to always keep your posture straight and your opinions to yourself. The clothes are a cage of fabric, heavy and restrictive, a constant physical reminder of your station and your duties. You are not dressing for comfort or for style, but for presentation. You are a symbol of your family's wealth and power, a doll to be displayed. You walk through the great hall, your soft leather shoes making almost no sound on the stone flags. The tapestries on the walls depict heroic, bloody battles and stoic, pious saints. They are meant to inspire, but they do little to stop the drafts that snake through the castle like invisible serpents. The air is thick with the smell of roasting meat from the kitchens, a greasy, savory promise of the day's first meal. You take your seat at the long, dark wood table. The meal is simple but heavy. Dark bread, a chunk of hard cheese, and watered-down ale served in a pewter tankard. Your father sits at the head of the table, his face a mask of stern authority. He doesn't speak to you of your dreams or your thoughts. His gaze is one of assessment, like a merchant inspecting his most valuable commodity. This silent breakfast is the medieval equivalent of a high-stakes corporate board meeting, and you are the subject of a future merger. As the sun climbs higher, it does little to burn through the persistent mist that clings to the valley. From your window, you can see the world beyond your stone fortress. The fields are a patchwork of brown and green, and the peasants who work them are small, hunched figures. Their lives a relentless cycle of toil. You watch them, and a strange sort of envy stirs within you. Their lives are brutal and short, you know this. But they are also their own, in a way yours will never be. They will choose their partners, perhaps for love, or at least for mutual survival. Your partner has already been chosen. He is a name, a title, a map of lands that will be joined to yours. You have never met him, but his shadow has loomed over your entire existence. If you enjoy this journey into the past, consider liking the video, but only if you truly feel the chill of these castle walls. Sometimes you are permitted to ride out, accompanied by a grim-faced guard. The streets of the nearby town are a chaotic symphony of life and filth. The air is an almost unbearable assault on the senses. The stench of the tanner's yard, the sharp odor of manure from the horses and oxen, the sweet, cloying smell of unwashed humanity packed tightly together, and underneath it all, the ever-present threat of disease. You see children with old faces begging for a coin, their eyes hollow. You pass a tavern, the door thrown open, and for a moment you are hit with a wave of sound. Raucous laughter, angry shouts, the clumsy melody of a lute, and the smell of spilled ale and sweat. It's a world so brutally, viscerally alive, and you are merely a ghost passing through it, separated by the invisible wall of your nobility. The afternoon is a quiet, suffocating affair. You sit with your mother and her ladies-in-waiting in the solar, the warmest room in the castle. The air is still, and smells of beeswax from the candles, and the faint floral scent of the herbs in their sewing baskets. Here you practice your needlework. Your stitches must be small and perfect. Your hands must be busy, your mind quiet. It is a training in patience, in obedience, in the art of being still and silent for hours on end. The women around you speak in low, hushed tones. Their conversations are a tapestry of gossip, alliances, and subtle warnings. They speak of childbirth as if it were a battlefield, counting the women who survived and the ones who did not. They look at you, and their eyes hold a mixture of pity and calculation. They are waiting for the day you will join their ranks, the day your body betrays your youth. As dusk bleeds across the sky, painting the gray clouds in shades of bruised purple and orange, a different kind of cold settles in. This is the cold of the night, deeper and more profound. The fires are built high, casting long, dancing shadows that make the familiar rooms seem strange and menacing. The sounds of the day, the blacksmith's hammer, the shouts of the guards, the distant lowing of cattle, are replaced by the mournful howl of the wind through the battlements and the scuttling of unseen things within the walls. Dinner is a more formal affair than breakfast, lit by dozens of flickering candles that reflect in the polished silver and the dark, rich wine. The conversation is of politics, of harvests, of war. You sit in silence, a decorative centerpiece, your presence a constant, unspoken reminder of the alliances that must be forged and the heirs that must be produced. You are beginning to understand the brutal mathematics of your existence. Your value is not in your mind or your heart or your spirit. It is in your womb. Your most dangerous and most important duty will be to produce a male heir for a man you barely know, a man whose age might be triple your own. To survive the attempt is the secondary, though highly desirable, objective. This isn't a secret. It's the fundamental truth of your world, as solid and as cold as the stone floor beneath your feet. The women who whisper in the solar know it. Your father, with his calculating eyes, knows it. And you, in the quiet, terrified corners of your own heart, are beginning to understand it too. Your childhood isn't ending on a specific date. It's waiting for a biological signal, a quiet, internal event that will launch the next phase of the contract. Later, in the solitude of your chamber, the servant unlaces your gown, freeing you from the day's confinement. The fire has been banked for the night, and the room is cold again. You climb into the large, canopied bed, the sheets cold and slightly damp against your skin. You lie there, in the oppressive dark, and listen to the sounds of the castle settling. You think of the man whose name is a whisper, the stranger whose bed you will one day share. You think of the babies who are spoken of as heirs and spares. You are a vessel, a bridge between one generation of power and the next. And as you drift on the edge of sleep, you can't help but wonder if you will survive the crossing. Let the story continue in your dreams. If you've made it this far, comment with the time you finally fell asleep. From the high, cold vantage of your window, the world below is a sprawling tapestry of labor, a living map of ceaseless effort. Your own life is a study in stillness, a long, drawn-out pause. But out there, life is measured in the swing of a hammer, the turn of a wheel, the casting of a net. Allow your mind to drift beyond these stone walls, to float down into the valley and walk, unseen, among the people whose sweat seasons the earth and whose calloused hands build the world you inhabit. Let us first descend into the darkness, into the wounds carved into the hillside, where the miners toil. Here the air itself is a thick, gritty paste you breathe in, tasting of coal dust, damp earth, and the metallic tang of unwon ore. The only light is the sputtering, greedy flame of a tallow lamp, casting monstrous, dancing shadows that make the narrow tunnels feel alive and predatory. The world is reduced to a circle of flickering orange and an ocean of absolute black. The sound is a relentless, percussive heartbeat. The chip, chip, chip of the pickaxe against the rock face. A sound that gets into your bones and stays there long after you've left. It's the sound of men slowly, painstakingly dismantling a mountain for a few precious scraps of iron or tin. You see a man named Thomas, his face a mask of grime, only the whites of his eyes showing a startling clarity in the gloom. His back is a knotted landscape of muscle, permanently bent from years of stooping in tunnels too low to stand in. He swings his pick, a motion he has repeated millions of times, a human pendulum marking the slow, agonizing passage of his own life. He pauses, not to rest, but to cough, a deep, rattling sound from his chest that echoes in the confined space, a cough that brings up a dark phlegm, the very substance of the mind trying to claim his lungs from the inside. His meal, when he takes it, is a lump of coarse bread and a piece of dried, salted fish, eaten in the suffocating dark. He doesn't taste it. He only feels the rough texture in his mouth and the welcome weight in his stomach. The water from his leather flask is stale and warm, but it's wet, and it clears some of the dust from his throat for a few precious moments. There are no breaks for sunlight, no measure of the day's passing. Time is marked only by the length of the candle and the depth of the ache in his shoulders. The greatest fear is not the exhaustion, but the sudden silence, a creak of wood, a shower of pebbles, the groan of the earth before it decides to reclaim the space he has stolen from it. Every swing of the pick is a gamble, a prayer that the ceiling above him will hold for one more swing, one more day, one more meager wage to bring home. Now let us rise from the earth's belly and drift toward a low-roofed cottage where a different kind of rhythm dominates. Here the air is thick with the fluffy, tickling dust of wool and flax, catching the light from a single, grimy window in hazy shafts. This is the world of the spinners. The dominant sound is the constant, hypnotic whirring of the spinning wheels, a chorus of wooden insects that never sleeps. It is a sound that burrows into your mind, the soundtrack to long days that bleed into longer evenings. The women and girls sit on low stools, their bodies bent over their work, their hands a blur of practiced, ceaseless motion. Their fingers, nimble and quick, draw out the fibers, twisting them into a thread of impossible consistency, a skill passed down from mother to daughter like a secret language or a hereditary curse. You watch a young girl, Alara, her face still soft with a childhood she is rapidly leaving behind. Her fingers are already calloused, with small red nicks where the rough fibers have abraded her skin. She is learning the rhythm, the gentle pull, the steady turn of the wheel. Her mother sits beside her, a silent, gaunt figure whose own hands are like gnarled roots, the joints swollen from decades of this same, unending motion. They do not speak much. The whirring of the wheels fills the silence, a constant reminder of the work that must be done, the quotas that must be met. Their break is a cup of thin, bitter herbal tea, sipped while their hands continue to sort and card the wool. A brief pause for the throat, but not for the fingers. The dust settles on their hair, their clothes, their eyelashes, a fine gray powder that marks them as belonging to the wheel. The day wears on, and the light begins to fail. A single candle is lit, its weak flame making the shadows in the room deepen. The whirring continues, perhaps a little slower now, a little more weary. Alara's shoulders ache, and her eyes burn from focusing on the thread in the dim light. She thinks of the fine, colorful gowns you wear in the castle, not with envy, but with a distant, detached curiosity. She cannot imagine a fabric that doesn't begin with this dusty room, this aching back, this eternal, mind-numbing whir. Her future is not a sealed contract for marriage, but a sealed fate tied to this wheel, spinning the thread of other people's lives, while her own remains a simple, unchanging strand, destined to be woven into a tapestry she will never see. Let your senses now follow a different scent, one that rises before the sun even considers gracing the sky. It is the smell of yeast, of fire, of warm, living dough. We are in the bakery, a cramped, sweltering space that feels like the mouth of a dragon. The air is so hot it's hard to breathe, thick with the fine, white dust of flour that coats every surface, including the baker himself. His name is John, and he moves with a heavy, deliberate slowness, born of perpetual exhaustion. His day began hours ago, in the cold, deep dark, mixing flour, water, and his precious, bubbling starter in a massive wooden trough. Now he is kneading, a rhythmic, forceful dance with the dough. He pushes, folds, and turns, his powerful arms and shoulders glistening with sweat, his breath coming in short, grunting bursts. The great brick oven radiates a heat that is almost a physical blow, a shimmering wall of energy that scorches the air. The long wooden peel is his only weapon against its fury. With practiced grace, he slides the pale, risen loaves into the oven's glowing maw, then slams the heavy iron door shut. The waiting is brief, a moment to wipe the sweat from his brow with a flour-dusted forearm and drink deeply from a jug of water. It is a moment of quiet anticipation, the calm before the fragrant storm. His hands and arms are a roadmap of old burns, silvery scars left by momentary carelessness, a permanent record of his battle with the heat. He doesn't even notice the new red welts anymore. They are simply part of the texture of his skin, the price of the perfect crust. Soon the air fills with one of the most beautiful smells in this brutal world, the scent of baking bread. It is a smell of life, of sustenance, of community. John pulls the loaves out, their crusts a perfect, crackling golden brown. He taps one, and it sounds hollow, the sign of a good bake. For a moment, a flicker of pride crosses his tired, flour-caked face. But there is no time to admire his work. The next batch of dough is already waiting, and the people of the town will be waking soon, hungry. His life is a cycle of fire and flour, of pre-dawn labor to provide the daily bread for others, while he himself is slowly being consumed by the heat and the toil, a human sacrifice to the god of the oven. Now let us travel to the water's edge, where the river air is cold and sharp, carrying the damp, fishy smell of the morning's catch. Here the fishermen are already at work, their small, sturdy boats rocking gently on the gray, sluggish water. The world here is one of muted colors, the gray of the water, the gray of the sky, the weathered, bleached gray of the wooden boats. The only sounds are the gentle lapping of the water against the hull, the cry of a distant gull, and the low, strained grunts of the men as they haul in their heavy, dripping nets. Their hands are the stuff of nightmares, raw and red from the cold water and the rough, abrasive ropes. The skin is split and cracked, the nails broken, a constant, low-grade pain that they have long since learned to ignore. You see an old man, Finn, his face a leathery mask, carved by a lifetime of wind and sun. He moves with a sailor's economy of motion, his balance perfect even as the small boat shifts beneath him. He works alongside his son, a boy who is just learning the ways of the river. Finn doesn't teach with words, but with gestures, a slight nod of the head, a flick of the wrist, a silent language understood between them. Their catch is meager today, a flash of silver scales writhing in the bottom of the boat, a disappointing haul for a long, cold morning's work. The fish smell permeates everything, their clothes, their skin, their hair. It is a smell they will carry with them back to their small hut, a smell they can never truly wash away. Their meal is a chunk of yesterday's bread and, if they are lucky, one of the smaller fish from the catch, gutted and eaten raw. There is no fire on the boat, no comfort. There is only the cold, the wet, and the gnawing uncertainty of the river. Finn looks at the sky, his pale blue eyes reading the clouds like a book. He knows the signs of a coming storm, the subtle shift in the wind, the change in the water's color. He remembers his own brother, taken by the river on a day that started just like this one. Every cast of the net is an act of faith, a plea to the river's fickle spirits. It is a life of constant negotiation, with an element that can give life one moment and snatch it away the next, a wet, cold, and silent gamble played out every single day. Let us now turn our gaze upward to the rooftops of the town, a chaotic jumble of thatch and slate. And from these rooftops, a strange, small figure emerges, black from head to toe. This is the world of the chimney sweep, a profession reserved for the smallest and most expendable of children. You see a boy no older than 7, his name long forgotten and replaced with the simple moniker Soot. His master, a large, grim-faced man, pushes him toward the dark, gaping mouth of a chimney. The boy's only tools are a small brush and his own small body. The fear in his eyes is a tangible thing, but he pushes it down. Disobedience is met with a swift, hard blow. He takes a breath of the relatively clean air and plunges into the blackness. Inside, it is a vertical tomb. The space is impossibly tight, the soot thick and suffocating. It clogs his nose and mouth, a dry, acrid powder that makes him cough and choke. He cannot see. He can only feel his way upward, his small, raw knees and elbows scraping against the rough brick. The darkness is absolute, and the silence is broken only by his own ragged breathing and the frantic scratching of his brush against the caked-on creosote. His greatest terror is getting stuck, his small shoulders wedged in a narrow flue, the panic rising in his chest like a black tide. He has heard stories of boys who went up and never came down, their cries for help growing fainter and fainter until they were just another part of the chimney's silence. He sings a little song to himself, a tune his mother used to hum, to keep the fear at bay, his small, wavering voice absorbed by the soot. When he finally emerges into the daylight at the top, he is a creature transformed, a small, dark demon blinking in the bright sun. He takes a deep, shuddering gasp of fresh air, the relief so profound it is almost painful. But it is a short-lived victory. There are more chimneys waiting, each one a new, dark, and terrifying challenge. His pay is a crust of bread and a place to sleep on a pile of soot-blackened rags in a cold cellar. His cough is constant, a dry, hacking sound that shakes his tiny frame. He will not live to be an old man. He will not even live to be a young one. His childhood is being scraped away, one chimney at a time. His future is black and as finite as the tunnels he is forced to climb. Now, follow the sound of a slow, rhythmic creaking and the lowing of a patient beast. We are on the road, a muddy, rutted track that connects your town to the next. Here is the domain of the carter, a life measured in the slow, deliberate steps of an ox. You see a man named Alaric, perched atop his heavy, two-wheeled cart, his face impassive as he stares at the rump of the great beast in front of him. The world moves at a crawl. The scenery changes with agonizing slowness. The same trees, the same muddy fields, the same gray sky, hour after hour. The only sounds are the creak and groan of the wooden axle, the squelch of the wheels in the mud, and the soft, rhythmic plodding of the ox's hooves. It is a symphony of monotony, a soundtrack for a life spent in perpetual, slow-motion transit. Alaric's job is to move goods, sacks of grain, barrels of ale, bolts of cloth, from one place of importance to another. He is a living link in a chain he doesn't understand, a human vessel for the commerce of lords and merchants. He speaks more to his ox, a gentle giant named Brutus, than he does to other people. He murmurs words of encouragement, clicks his tongue, and sometimes shares a piece of his apple with the animal. Brutus is his companion, his engine, and his only confidant on these long, lonely stretches of road. His meals are simple: hard cheese, stale bread, and an onion, eaten without stopping, his eyes always on the path ahead, watching for the deep ruts or the slick patches of mud that could trap his cart and ruin his day. The dangers of the road are not just boredom and mud. There are whispers of bandits in the woods that line the road, men who would slit his throat for the goods in his cart and the few coins in his purse. Every rustle in the trees, every snap of a twig makes his hand tighten on the heavy staff that rests beside him. At night he sleeps under the cart, wrapped in a coarse wool blanket, with Brutus tethered nearby. The animal's warm, heavy breathing is a comfort in the cold, silent dark. Alaric's life is a long, straight line, drawn slowly from one town to the next. He doesn't dream of destinations, only of the road itself, an endless, muddy ribbon that has become the entirety of his world. Finally, let us find a place of steam and harsh smells, where a group of women are engaged in a battle against filth. This is the laundry, a noisy, chaotic place by the riverbank, even in the cold. The air is thick with the sharp, chemical smell of lye and the damp, earthy scent of wet wool. Great cauldrons of water bubble over smoky fires, sending clouds of steam into the chilly air. Here, women, the operarias of their time, stand for hours, their arms submerged to the elbows in hot, soapy water or beating wet, heavy linens against smooth, flat rocks. The work is brutal and relentless. It reddens and cracks the skin, saps the strength from the back and shoulders, and fills the lungs with steam and smoke. You watch a widow named Isolde. Her face is perpetually flushed from the heat of the fires, and her back is bent in a permanent curve from years of leaning over washing tubs and river stones. She scrubs a fine linen chemise, perhaps one of your own, with a fierce, rhythmic energy, her knuckles white as she works the grime out of the fabric. The sound is one of wet, percussive slaps and the constant gossiping chatter of the women around her. They share news, trade insults, and sing bawdy songs, their voices a defiant chorus against the hardship of their labor. Their talk is of cheating husbands, sick children, and the rising price of bread. It is a small, fierce community, forged in steam and shared misery. Their break is a moment to sit on a cold stone, to wring the water from their swollen, prune-like fingers, and to eat a handful of cold, cooked beans from a small wooden bowl. The respite is short. The piles of dirty laundry are mountainous, a seemingly infinite supply of other people's dirt. Isolde's work earns her just enough to feed her 2 small children. Every shirt she scrubs, every sheet she beats clean, is an act of survival. As she works, she sees the fine embroidery on a lady's gown and allows herself a brief, bitter smile. She is the one who keeps the world of nobles looking clean and pristine, a secret, back-breaking effort that allows you to exist in your world of performative purity, utterly unaware of the raw hands and aching backs that make it all possible. Let your mind now turn from the rhythm of labor to the dissonance of its inevitable collapse. For every task you have witnessed, there is a shadow self, a moment where the rhythm breaks, the tool slips, the body fails. This is a world without safety nets, without warning labels, without an emergency number to call. Danger is not an abstract concept. It is a constant, ambient presence, like the dampness in the stone walls. It is the accepted price of drawing breath. The lives of the people who serve your world are not just hard, they are fragile, balanced on the edge of a knife. A single misstep, a moment of inattention, a breath of the wrong air, and the tapestry of their existence is simply and permanently cut. There is no lawsuit, no insurance claim, only a sudden gaping hole where a person used to be. Let us return to the sky, to the dizzying heights of the new cathedral, rising against the horizon like a stone prayer. You see a man, William, walking a narrow wooden beam 100 feet in the air. The wind-up here is a living thing, a bully that shoves and pulls at his loose tunic, trying to unbalance him. He carries a block of stone on his shoulder, its weight a familiar ache. Below him, the world is a map, the people like ants. He has done this 1,000 times. But today, a sudden gust of wind is stronger than the last. It catches the flat side of the stone, turning it into a sail. For a fraction of a second, he is a statue of imbalance, his arms flailing against the empty air. And then, he is no longer walking. He is falling. The descent is strangely quiet, the ground rushing up to meet him with an indifferent finality. The sound he makes upon impact is not a dramatic crash, but a soft, wet thud, a sound that is horribly, unforgettably final. The other workers pause for a moment, a brief, silent acknowledgement. Then, someone is sent to fetch his meager belongings, and another man is called to take his place on the beam. The cathedral, after all, must continue its slow, inexorable climb toward a heaven that seems, at this moment, brutally far away. Now, descend from the open air into the closed, suffocating world of the tanner. The stench here is a form of violence, an assault that makes your eyes water and your stomach clench. The tanner, a man named Giles, stands thigh-deep in a stone vat filled with a noxious soup. It is a slurry of water, lime, and dog feces, collected by children from the streets for a few pennies. This is what it takes to strip the hair and flesh from a cowhide. Giles's skin is permanently pickled by the caustic mixture, his hands and legs a patchwork of sores and rashes that never heal. Today he is treading the hides, his bare feet squelching in the foul liquid. He feels a sudden dizziness, the fumes finally overwhelming his senses. He stumbles, his head dipping below the surface of the putrid bath. He chokes, inhaling a liquid that is part poison, part filth. His struggles are brief, his thrashing barely disturbing the surface. No one notices for several minutes. When they finally pull him out, his skin is already beginning to slunk away from the bone, his lungs filled with the very substance of his grim trade. He has not merely died at his job, he has been consumed by it. The dangers are not always so sudden or so dramatic. Sometimes they are ingested, a slow, creeping poison taken in with your daily bread. Let us go back to John, the baker. The harvest was poor this year, and the price of flour is high. To make his supply last, to turn a meager profit, he has made some additions. You watch as he mixes in a fine white powder that is not flour at all. It is chalk dust, or perhaps ground up bone, an inert substance that adds weight and volume but no nourishment. To whiten the loaf and make it seem purer, he adds a pinch of alum, a chemical that will cause a slow, grinding pain in the bellies of those who eat it. The bread he pulls from the oven looks perfect, it smells divine, but it is a lie. It is a phantom of sustenance that will fill the stomach but starve the body, a slow-acting betrayal served up at every table in the town. For the poor, who rely on this bread as their main source of food, it is a sentence of slow decay, their strength quietly eroded from the inside out by the very thing they believe is keeping them alive. This quiet deception flows not just in bread, but in drink. The alewife, a woman named Matilda, runs a tavern that is loud and full, but her barrels are not as full as they should be. Water is her first and most honest cheat. But to mask the watered-down taste, she adds other things. A pinch of hot pepper to give it a false kick, a bit of soot to restore the dark color. She might add certain herbs, not for flavor, but for effect. Things that can make a man dizzy or aggressive or strangely euphoric, ensuring he buys another cup to chase the feeling. She doesn't know the names of these plants, only what the old woman in the woods told her they would do. The ale she serves is not just a drink. It is an unpredictable potion, a gamble with every tankard. One night it brings raucous laughter, the next a brawl that ends with a knife in the ribs. The water might have been safer. And when the adulterated food and the dangerous work inevitably lead to sickness, where do you turn? You turn to a man like Physician Arnaud, a man of great learning and even greater confidence. He arrives smelling of dusty robes and self-importance. He does not ask about your symptoms. He consults the stars. He believes your body is a vessel for 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, and your illness is simply an imbalance. A young boy is hot with fever? Clearly, an excess of blood. The cure is obvious: leeches. You watch as the small, black, slug-like creatures are placed on the boy's pale skin. They attach themselves, growing fat and bloated, with the very life force the boy needs to fight his illness. The boy grows paler, weaker, his feverish heat replaced by a deathly chill. The physician nods sagely, declaring the treatment a success, the excess humor having been removed. He collects his fee and leaves, utterly convinced of his own genius, while the boy's parents begin the quiet, desperate ritual of praying for a miracle. They would have been better off with a bar of chalk-filled bread. These beliefs permeate every corner of life, a thick fog of superstition that obscures all logic. A farmer's cow is sick and will not give milk. The reason is not bad feed or disease, but obviously a curse from an envious neighbor. The only cure is to draw a picture of the suspected witch on a piece of wood and burn it, while chanting an ancient, nonsensical rhyme. A baby is born with a birthmark on its face. It is not a random collection of pigment, but a sign that the mother looked upon a hair while she was pregnant. To ward off evil spirits from your home, you don't fix the broken shutter that bangs in the wind. You hang a bundle of dried herbs and a rusty iron nail over the door. These are not quaint folk tales. They are the operating instructions for reality, a system of cause and effect as real to these people as the mud on their boots. In a world of such profound uncertainty, any explanation, no matter how absurd, is better than none at all. And for you, in your cold stone room, these absurdities are circling ever closer. The women who tend to you whisper their own strange remedies. To ensure an easy childbirth, they say, you must wear a girdle made from the skin of an eel. To guarantee a male heir, you must drink a potion made from the dust of a particular kind of mushroom, mixed with wine and the powdered testicle of a rooster. They say these things with absolute seriousness. They are preparing you not just for a husband, but for a battle with your own body. And their weapons are made of superstition and fear. You look at the physician who attends your father, with his charts of the heavens and his jars of leeches. And you look at the old woman in the kitchen with her pouch of dried herbs and animal parts. You begin to realize, with a creeping dread, that they are not so different. Both are armed with a terrifying, unshakable certainty, and your life may very well end up in their hands. The line between science and sorcery, you see, has not yet been drawn. The certainty of your world is a fragile illusion, a thin sheet of ice over a deep, cold, and turbulent ocean of sickness. For all the stone walls and armed guards, the greatest enemies are invisible, carried on the breath of a servant, lurking in a sip of water, or waiting patiently in the dust of a forgotten corner. You hear it sometimes in the great hall, a cough that is more than just a cough. It is a wet, persistent, rattling sound that seems to come from a place deep within a person's soul. It is a sound that makes the other servants subtly take a step back, a sound that makes your mother press a perfumed handkerchief to her nose. This is the quiet opening act of a long, slow tragedy, a disease they call the consumption, for that is precisely what it does. It consumes a person from the inside out, slowly, methodically, turning their lungs into a fragile, bloody lace. You've seen it in a distant cousin, how her cheeks grew ever more rosy, her eyes brighter and more beautiful, with a feverish intensity, even as her body wasted away to a bird-like fragility. It is a strangely poetic disease, a romantic decline into nothingness, where the victim becomes more ethereal with each passing week, coughing delicate flower-like petals of bright red blood into a snow-white cloth, until one day they simply become too light to remain tethered to the earth, and they exhale for the last time. Then there are the fevers that arrive not with a whisper, but with a sudden violent kick, like a horse in a crowded market. They call it jail fever or ship fever, because it breeds in the places where humanity is packed too tightly, in the filth and the fear. One day a man is strong, working in the fields or hauling goods to the market, and the next he is on his back, his skin burning to the touch, his eyes wide with a delirium that makes him see devils in the shadows and hear accusations in the whisper of the wind. A strange, blotchy red rash blooms across his torso, like a map of some unknown and terrible country. His mind, once a familiar and orderly place, becomes a chaotic landscape of nonsense and terror. He might speak to his long-dead mother, or cower from a harmless wooden stool, or try to fight an imaginary foe. It is a complete and total system crash of the human body, a swift and brutal invasion that overwhelms all defenses in a matter of days. And it carries its own particular smell, a sweet, musty odor that clings to the bedclothes and the very air of the room, a scent that announces its presence before you even see the victim, the unmistakable perfume of a body at war with itself and losing. Of all the invisible invaders, perhaps the most feared is the one they call the speckled monster, smallpox. It does not care if you are a king or a peasant. It announces itself with a high fever and a splitting headache, a few days of misery that are only a prelude to the true horror. Then the spots begin to appear. At first, they are small and red, an innocent-looking rash. But they grow, swelling into hard, pearl-like blisters, pustules filled with a thick, yellowish fluid. They cover every inch of the body, from the soles of the feet to the inside of the mouth and throat, making it an agony to swallow, to speak, to even breathe. The victim becomes a grotesque, swollen creature, unrecognizable to their own family, their features lost beneath a lumpy, weeping mask. The smell is that of rot and decay, the smell of a body putrefying while it is still alive. If you survive, and many do not, the monster leaves its mark. The pustules dry up and fall off, leaving behind a constellation of deep, pitted scars, a permanent reminder of your ordeal. You become a member of a secret society, the pockmarked, your face a testament to your survival, a grim badge of honor in a world that offers so few. For you, a girl whose face is part of her dowry, it is a fate worse than a quick, clean death. And then there is the intimate, undignified betrayal of your own gut. It can come from the baker's clever additions to his flour, a slow, grinding ache that steals your strength. Or it can come from a fungus on the rye bread, a strange and terrifying affliction called St. Anthony's fire. It begins with a tingling in your fingers and toes, which soon erupts into a sensation of being burned alive, a fire licking at your limbs from the inside, a pain so excruciating it drives people to madness. They see visions, speak to angels and demons, their bodies contorting in spasms. But more common, more mundane, is the simple, brutal reality of the flux. It is a watery, bloody, and relentless emptying of the body, a sickness that reduces the strongest knight to a weak, dehydrated husk in a matter of days. It is the great equalizer, a deeply personal and humiliating war waged in the privacy of a chamber pot. There is no glory in it, no poetic decline. It is a messy, smelly, and deeply unpleasant business, a reminder that for all the pomp and ceremony of your world, every human body is just a fragile, temperamental bag of fluids, all too easily, and all too often, sprung a leak. When the body begins its rebellion, there are places you can go. Not for a cure, you must understand. The idea of a cure is a form of magical thinking, a hopeful fantasy. No, you go to these places to be cared for, to have your soul prepared, and to die in the presence of God. You might be taken to a hospital, a word that sounds reassuringly modern, but the reality is something else entirely. Imagine a long, low stone hall, like the nave of a church. This is the main ward of the Hotel Dieu, the house of God. The first thing that greets you is not a person, but the smell. It is a thick, complex, and overwhelming wave of scent, a tapestry woven from unwashed bodies, stale sweat, blood, vomit, human waste, and the cloying, herbal sweetness of incense, a desperate and failing attempt to mask the raw odor of human suffering with the perfume of piety. The air is so heavy you can almost taste it, a physical presence that coats the back of your throat. The sound is the next thing you notice. It is a constant, low-level symphony of misery, a chorus of groans, the wet, hacking coughs that seem to come from every corner, the soft, incessant weeping of someone in pain or despair, and the high, delirious muttering of a man lost in fever. Underneath it all you can hear the gentle, rhythmic Latin chanting of the nuns, a steady, calming counterpoint to the chaotic sounds of sickness. There is no privacy here. The beds are not individual cubicles of quiet rest. They are long, wide wooden platforms, covered in a thin layer of straw, and you will share your bed. You may find yourself lying next to a man with a gangrenous leg, his flesh turning black and smelling of spoiled meat, and on your other side, a woman in the final, rattling stages of consumption. Sickness is a communal affair, your personal agony, just one more voice in the choir. The day in this house of God begins before sunrise, with the sound of a small, insistent bell. The nuns, their faces pale and serene in the flickering candlelight, move through the ward. They are not doctors or nurses in your modern sense. They are brides of Christ, and their work is not primarily to heal the body, but to save the soul. They see the sickness as a trial sent by God, a chance for the sinner to repent before meeting his Maker. Their touch is gentle but impersonal, their expressions a mask of divine compassion that betrays no disgust, no fear, no pity. They move from bed to bed, offering a sip of watered-down wine from a communal cup, a gesture that is both a sacrament and, unintentionally, a remarkably efficient way to spread infection from one patient to the next. Breakfast is a thin, gray gruel, served in a wooden bowl. It is tasteless and barely warm, meant not for nourishment, but to simply keep the spark of life from extinguishing completely. For those too weak to feed themselves, a nun will spoon the gruel into their mouths with a detached, methodical patience. You watch as she feeds an old man whose hands tremble too much to hold the spoon. Some of the gruel spills down his chin and onto the rough linen sheet, where it will stay and dry and become yet another layer in the bed's long and sordid history. After the meager meal, the morning's true work begins. For some, this means the changing of a bandage, a slow, careful unwrapping of a dirty linen strip to reveal the angry, weeping wound beneath. The nun will wash it with wine and apply a fresh poultice of herbs, murmuring a prayer as she works. The herbs may do nothing, but the prayer, in her mind, is the most potent medicine of all. For others, the mourning brings a different kind of attention. 2 strong monks, their sleeves rolled up, will lift a patient from the bed. The straw beneath him is soiled, a dark, damp patch that reeks of ammonia. They carry him to a corner, where he is left on the cold stone floor, while they scrape out the old straw and lay down a fresh, though not nearly thick enough layer. The brief moment of clean bedding is a small, almost forgotten luxury. The patient is then returned to his place, his body shivering from the cold floor, to begin the slow process of soiling the new straw. This is the rhythm of the day, a constant, exhausting battle against the body's relentless production of filth, a battle that is always, inevitably, lost. The hospital is a place that runs on faith and fortitude, not on any principle of hygiene you would recognize. Around mid-morning, a figure of great importance might make an appearance. The physician. He does not arrive with a bag of instruments, but with a chart of the heavens. He is a man of learning, which means he has read the ancient texts of Galen and Hippocrates, and he believes with an unshakable certainty that the human body is governed by the same forces that move the planets and the stars. He will stand at a safe distance from the bed, holding a perfumed cloth to his nose to ward off the foul miasmas that he believes cause disease. He will not touch the patient. Touching patients is for monks and nuns. His job is to diagnose, to use his great intellect to unravel the cosmic mystery of the illness. He will consult his astrological charts, noting the position of Mars and Saturn. He will ask to see the patient's urine, holding the flask up to the light, not to test it, but to divine its color and clarity, which he believes tells him everything about the balance of the 4 humors within the body. His diagnosis is always the same, just with different details. An imbalance, too much black bile causing melancholy, an excess of blood causing the fever. His prescription is therefore just as predictable. The humors must be rebalanced. For the man with the fever, this means bloodletting. A monk will be summoned, who will produce a small, sharp knife called a phleem. He will make a swift incision in the patient's arm, and the dark, sluggish blood will be collected in a brass bowl. The physician will watch intently, nodding sagely as the bowl fills. He will instruct the monk to stop only when the patient faints, a sure sign that the excess humor has been removed and balance is being restored. The patient, already weakened by fever, is now further weakened by blood loss, his chances of survival plummeting with every drop that fills the bowl. The physician, his work done, collects his fee from the hospital's almoner and departs, confident that he has steered the patient back toward health, a perfect example of a successful operation where the patient dies. Perhaps a new patient arrives, carried in on a wooden litter. He is a carter, his leg horribly twisted and shattered after his cart overturned on the road. The bone, a jagged white shard, pokes through the bloody skin. There is no question of setting it. The flesh is already beginning to smell sweet, the first sign of putrefaction. The physician, if he is still present, will declare that the leg must come off. There is no other way. This is the domain of another specialist, the barber surgeon, a man who is skilled at both cutting hair and cutting off limbs. He arrives with a leather roll of tools, saws, knives, and a small charcoal brazier. The carter is given a leather strap to bite down on, and 2 monks hold his arms and his good leg. There is no anesthetic, only a large swig of strong raw wine, which does little to dull the senses. The barber surgeon works quickly, not out of mercy, but out of practicality. He slices through the skin and muscle with a long knife. The carter screams, echoing through the stone hall, a sound so raw and animal that the other patients who are conscious either stare in horror or begin to pray loudly. The surgeon then takes up his saw. The sound of the metal biting into the living bone is unforgettable, a wet, grating noise that seems to go on for an eternity. Finally, the leg is severed. But the ordeal is not over. The stump is a fountain of blood. The surgeon takes a flat iron from the brazier, its tip glowing a dull red. He presses it against the open wound. The sizzle of cooking flesh and the smell of burnt meat fill the air. along with another higher-pitched scream from the carter before he finally, mercifully passes out. The wound is cauterized. The bleeding has stopped. The man may yet live, if the shock or the inevitable infection doesn't kill him first. This is medieval surgery, a brutal, screaming, and sometimes successful form of butchery. The afternoon is a long, slow, quiet time. The light filtering through the high, narrow windows is weak and gray. The ward settles into a torpor. The patients doze, their sleep troubled by pain and fever dreams. The nuns move silently, their felt shoes making no sound on the stone floor. They are mending linens, their needles flashing in the dim light, or sitting by the bedside of the dying, their lips moving in silent prayer. This is the time when the reality of this place settles in. It is a waiting room between life and death. There is no sense of urgency, no frantic effort to cure. There is only a profound, weary sense of resignation. The nuns are here to manage the process, to provide what little comfort they can, and to ensure that every soul that departs does so with a clean slate, confessed and absolved. The body is a temporary vessel, and its suffering, while regrettable, is ultimately insignificant compared to the fate of the immortal soul. As the afternoon wears on, you notice one of the patients beginning to change. An old woman, her breathing, which had been shallow, now becomes a loud, rattling struggle. It is a sound they call the death rattle, as the lungs begin to fill with fluid. A nun notices immediately. She glides to the bedside and sends another to fetch the priest. He arrives quickly, carrying the holy oils and the host. The other patients who are able fall to their knees. Those who cannot cross themselves in their beds. The priest begins the last rites, his Latin phrases filling the hall, a solemn and ancient ritual designed to guide the soul on its final journey. He anoints the old woman's forehead with oil, places a tiny wafer on her tongue, and makes the sign of the cross. A few moments later, the rattling stops. There is a final, gentle sigh. A profound silence seems to fall over the ward for a heartbeat. The woman is gone. There is no time for mourning. The process that follows is efficient and unsentimental. The nun gently closes the woman's eyes and ties her jaw shut with a strip of linen. The monks return with a simple wooden bier. They wrap the body in its own bedsheet, which now becomes its shroud. There are no tears, no ceremony. The body is carried out of the ward, destined for a small, cold room where it will wait to be taken to the cemetery. Back in the ward, the straw from her part of the bed is removed and burned. The wooden planks are wiped down with vinegar and water. Within the hour, the space is ready. A new patient, a young man with a hacking cough and a fever-bright flush on his cheeks, is brought in and laid down in the exact spot where the old woman died. The great, slow, grinding wheel of the hospital continues to turn, one soul departing, another arriving to take its place. If the hospital represents the official, sanctioned approach to sickness, a whole other world of healing exists in the shadows. In the village, if your child is sick, you might not seek out a physician with his star charts. You would go to the cunning woman, the healer who lives at the edge of the woods. Her cottage smells of drying herbs, beeswax, and wood smoke. She does not speak of humors, but of blockages, of ill winds, and of the malevolent power of the evil eye. Her remedies are made from the things she gathers in the forest and the field. Willow bark for fevers, cobwebs to staunch bleeding, foxglove for a weak heart, a plant that can kill as easily as it can cure. She is a pharmacist, a psychologist, and a magician all in one. Her cures are a mixture of practical herbalism and powerful ritual. She might give you a bitter tea to drink, but she will also instruct you to bury a lock of your hair at a crossroads by the light of the full moon. Her medicine is intertwined with magic, and for this, she is both respected and feared. She walks a fine line. One day she is a healer. The next, if a cure fails or a neighbor's cow dies, she could be accused of being a witch. And for you, and for every woman, there is another figure of immense power and importance, the midwife. She is the one who presides over the most dangerous and most common medical event in any woman's life, childbirth. She is not trained in a university. Her knowledge is passed down from her mother, an apprenticeship of blood and birth. She knows by touch when a baby is in the wrong position, and she has strong, skilled hands to try and turn it. She has herbs to speed up a slow labor, or to slow a dangerous hemorrhage. She is a figure of comfort and authority in the birthing room, a place no man, not even a physician, would dare to enter. But she, too, is powerless against the great catastrophes of childbirth. A baby that will not come out, a hemorrhage that will not stop. She has no tools for these disasters, only her hands and her prayers. It is said that for every 10 children born, 1 mother will die in the bed. Her success is expected. Her failure is a tragedy that is both common and devastating. She is the gatekeeper of life, but the gate is often guarded by death. And when the healers, the physicians, and the midwives all fail, there is one final, unavoidable destination: the cemetery. It is not the peaceful, manicured lawn you might imagine. It is a lumpy, overcrowded piece of land next to the church, the ground constantly being disturbed. The rich might have a stone sarcophagus inside the church itself, their bones resting in sanctified peace. But for the common folk, burial is a more practical affair. A simple hole, a linen shroud, and a wooden cross that will rot away in a few years. The gravedigger is a busy man, his work never done. He knows the geography of his small kingdom, knows which spots are old enough to be reused. He will often unearth the bones of a previous occupant to make room for a new one, piling the old skulls and femurs in a corner of the yard or in a charnel house. During an outbreak of the plague, even this pretense of individual burial is abandoned. A great pit is dug, and the bodies are brought on carts, dozens at a time, to be tumbled in and covered with a sprinkling of quicklime. The cemetery is not a place of quiet remembrance. It is a raw, churned-up field of human compost, a final, earthy testament to the fragility of life and the relentless efficiency of death. You sit in your solar, stitching a fine piece of silk, and you hear a sneeze from one of the serving girls. It is a small sound, but in the quiet room it seems as loud as a thunderclap. Everyone freezes for a moment. Is it just a bit of dust, or is it the beginning of something else? You are protected by your wealth, by better food, by walls that keep the filth of the streets at a distance. But you are not immune. A simple prick of your finger with this very needle could fester, the infection spreading up your arm, bringing a fever that no physician can cure. The eelskin girdle the women whisper about will not protect you from a difficult birth. The powdered rooster testicle will not change a daughter into a son. You live in a world that is steeped in a profound and terrifying ignorance about the very workings of the body you inhabit. You are a precious, valuable asset, but you are as fragile as the peasant girl in the field, as vulnerable as the old woman in the hospital bed. Your health is not a given. It is a temporary gift, a fleeting truce in a long and unwinnable war against a million invisible enemies. And you know with a cold certainty that settles deep in your bones that the greatest battle of your life has not yet even begun. Let your mind drift away from the silent, ordered world within your castle walls and into the chaotic, vibrant heart of the town on a market day. The air itself is a thick stew of smells, a battleground of aromas where the sweet scent of fresh-baked bread clashes with the pungent iron tang of the butcher's stall, where the earthy perfume of damp vegetables is overwhelmed by the sharp, acrid stench of the tanner's hides, stacked like stiff, hairy maps of dead animals. The sound is a human symphony, a roaring wave of noise composed of 100 different parts, the bellow of a merchant praising his wares, the high-pitched squeal of a piglet escaping its pen, the good-natured haggling that sounds suspiciously like an argument, the laughter of children, and underneath it all, the constant, shuffling, murmuring hum of the crowd. This is the town's central nervous system, where news, gossip, and superstition are traded as currency, where a rumor about a 2-headed calf born last Tuesday is considered far more valuable and interesting than the price of barley. Amidst the chaos, you see a small crowd gathered around a man with a wooden cart. He isn't selling food or cloth, but fear. He is selling crudely printed woodcuts, single sheets of cheap paper with stark, black images. One depicts a monstrous creature, half man, half goat, said to have been born to a sinful woman in a distant village. Another shows a shower of blood raining down from the heavens, a clear and terrifying omen of God's displeasure. A traveling friar, his face flushed with righteous fury, stands on a barrel nearby, using these images as his sermon notes. He shouts about the sins of the world, about vanity and lust, pointing a bony finger at women whose necklines are too low or whose smiles are too wide. The people listen, their faces a mixture of fascination and terror. They buy the woodcuts, not as art, but as warnings, talismans to be nailed to their doors to ward off the very damnation they so eagerly consume as entertainment. This is their 24-hour news cycle, a grotesque and holy spectacle all at once. When the sun begins to set, the energy of the market shifts, much of it flowing into the dim, smoky confines of the tavern. If the church is the town's soul, the tavern is its gut, a place of loud, messy, and honest digestion. The air inside is thick, with the smell of spilled ale, sweat, and wet wool, a scent that seems to cling to the very timbers of the low ceiling. The light from the fire and a few tallow candles is a warm, conspiratorial orange, making everyone look both more friendly and more dangerous. Here, the rigid social order of the day softens. A knight might find himself sharing a bench with a blacksmith, their voices joined in a bawdy song about a lustful milkmaid. Dice rattle on a wooden table, a game of luck that can change a man's fortune in an instant, often ending in accusations and the flash of a knife. This is where taboos are not just broken, but celebrated, a place where the sacred rules of the outside world are temporarily suspended in a glorious, drunken, and often violent haze. There are days when the entire town seems to erupt in a kind of sanctioned madness. On the feast day of a local saint, the day begins with a solemn, pious procession to the church, the air filled with the scent of incense and the sound of solemn chanting. But once the religious duties are done, the sacred gives way to the profane with breathtaking speed. The town square becomes a fairground. Men engage in brutal wrestling matches and shin-kicking contests, their grunts of pain drowned out by the cheers of the crowd. An acting troupe performs a play that mixes biblical stories with slapstick humor and crude jokes about the local priest. As the day wears on and the ale flows, people don animal masks, their identities submerged in a strange pagan ritual that the church pretends not to see. They dance wildly to the frantic music of a pipe and tabor, a chaotic, swirling mass of humanity shedding its daily burdens in a burst of wild, primal energy that feels far older than the stone church that watches over it. You once watched a peasant wedding from a high window, a spectacle of public ritual that felt both alien and unnervingly familiar. The bride and groom, looking terrified and awkward, were paraded through the village, pelted with grains of wheat and barley to ensure their fertility. The ceremony was followed by a feast, where the jokes became progressively cruder, all centered on the act that was to follow. The true climax of the day was not the vows, but the bedding ceremony. A crowd of drunken, laughing friends and family would escort the couple to their chamber, undress them, and put them to bed together. They would only leave after seeing the couple under the blankets, shouting final pieces of lewd advice through the door. There is no privacy in this moment. The creation of a new family is a community project, and the consummation of the marriage is not a private act of love, but a public duty, witnessed and verified. You shivered as you watched, knowing a similar, if more stately version of this ritual awaited you. The opposite ritual, a funeral, is just as public and just as steeped in a different kind of superstition. The tolling of the church bell, slow and methodical, hangs over the town like a shroud. You see the procession, the body wrapped in a simple shroud and carried on a wooden bier, followed by a train of black-clad mourners. Some are family, their grief raw and real. Others are professional mourners, old women paid to wail and tear at their hair, ensuring the deceased receives a sufficiently dramatic send-off. They believe a person's spirit lingers, jealous and potentially dangerous, until the body is safely in the ground. Windows are shuttered, and mirrors are covered in the deceased's house, lest the ghost see its own reflection and be trapped. At the edge of the churchyard you might see a wretched, stooped figure, the sin-eater. He is given a crust of bread and a bowl of ale, which are passed over the corpse. By eating and drinking, he ritually consumes the sins of the dead, taking their spiritual burden onto his own soul in exchange for a few coins, ensuring the deceased can enter heaven unburdened. He is a pariah, a necessary and terrifying part of the machinery of death. These public displays stand in stark contrast to the intensely private and often deeply strange world of personal habits. The very idea of hygiene is governed by a thicket of taboos. You are taught that frequent bathing, especially in hot water, is a dangerous act of vanity. It is believed to open the pores of the skin, creating an inviting doorway for pestilence and bad air, the infamous miasmas, to enter the body. The nobility, therefore, prefers a dry fume, using perfumes, fragrant powders, and pomanders filled with ambergris and spices to mask the body's natural odors. Your own daily routine involves being rubbed down with a linen cloth, perhaps scented with rosewater, but never a full immersion. The result is a world where everyone carries their own distinct aromatic signature, the wealthy smell of exotic spices and flowers, a mobile cloud of perfume, the poor smell of sweat, wood smoke, and earth. It is a social order defined not just by sight and sound, but by scent, an unspoken language of cleanliness that has almost nothing to do with being clean. The body itself, especially the female body, is a landscape of fear and superstition, a source of both life and profound ritual impurity. A woman's monthly blood is considered the most powerful and dangerous substance in nature. It is whispered that a menstruating woman can cause wine to turn to vinegar, crops to wither in the field, and mirrors to crack with a single glance. It is a time of shame and concealment, a secret sickness you are taught to hide. This makes the public nature of your own approaching womanhood a terrifying paradox. The very event that must be hidden is the one that will be announced to the world. And the act of conception is no less mysterious. It is commonly believed that a woman must experience pleasure, a little death of her own, in order to conceive. This idea, a strange spark of required female agency in a world that allows so little, is a source of endless anxiety and speculation, a private, biological function that becomes a matter of public and political importance. Life is a constant negotiation with unseen forces, a daily effort to appease 1,000 hungry superstitions. A farmer nails a horseshoe over his barn door, not for luck, but specifically to trap any passing witches, who are known to be confounded by objects made of iron. A mother ties a piece of red thread around her baby's wrist and hangs a pouch of foul-smelling herbs around its neck. Not just one charm, but a whole arsenal of defenses against the evil eye, that malevolent glance from an envious neighbor that can cause a child to sicken and die. If a child is born sickly or misshapen, it is whispered that it must be a changeling, a fairy creature left in place of the stolen human infant. The only way to get the real child back is to torment the changeling, perhaps by leaving it on a hot stove or dunking it in a cold river, hoping its fairy mother will take pity and make the exchange. These are not just fanciful stories. They are the desperate logic of a world trying to explain away the random cruelty of infant mortality and genetic chance. You watch all of this from your privileged cage. You see the raw, vibrant, and terrifying social fabric of the world you are about to formally enter. You see the boisterous festivals, the solemn funerals, the deeply held belief in monsters and magic. And you realize, with a cold, sinking feeling, that your fine silk gowns and the thick stone walls of your castle are no protection at all. The same superstitions that govern the life of a peasant girl will govern yours. Your wedding night will be a matter of state concern, your fertility a subject of public prayer and private magical ritual. The health of your future children will be entrusted to the same charms and prayers that protect the farmer's baby. The physician who attends you believes your womb is a cold, wet organ that can wander around your body if not properly anchored by pregnancy. The world outside your window is not a distant spectacle. It is your future, a swirling, chaotic, and deeply irrational sea, and you are standing at the water's edge, waiting for the signal to dive in. Let your mind drift forward, away from the cold certainty of that stone room, and feel the slow, grinding turn of centuries. The world you have just witnessed, so solid and unchangeable, was not a final state. It was a crucible, and from its intense, brutal pressure, something new was slowly, painfully forged. Think of John the baker, with his chalk dust bread, a quiet act of poison repeated in 1,000 kitchens. A day came when a group of bakers, tired of being undercut by cheats, formed a guild. They created rules, not out of altruism, but self-interest. They inspected flour, set standards for weight and quality, and punished those who broke the code. And from that simple, selfish beginning, a radical idea was born, that the food you buy should be what it claims to be. So if today you can break a loaf of bread and trust that it will nourish you, if you can eat without fear of the slow poison of a dishonest baker, you owe a small, silent debt to that first flicker of organized consumer protection, a fragile shield forged in the fire of a medieval oven. Now let us return to the house of God, to the physician with his star charts and the barber surgeon with his red-hot iron. For centuries, this was the landscape of healing. But eventually, a few rebellious minds began to ask a dangerous question. What if the ancient texts were wrong? A new kind of scholar, a man of anatomy, would, in the dead of night, defy the church and the deepest taboos of his society. He would take the body of an executed criminal, lay it upon a slab, and with a steady, reverent hand, he would cut. He was not looking for the soul or the balance of humors. He was looking for the truth. He traced the pathways of nerves, mapped the architecture of bone, and held the still, intricate machinery of a human heart in his hands. This quiet, gruesome work was a revolution. It was the first assertion that your body is not a mystical vessel subject to the whims of planets, but a physical reality that can be known, understood, and perhaps one day repaired. If today a surgeon can mend your heart, or a doctor can diagnose your illness by looking at a screen instead of the stars, it is because of those first bloody secret maps drawn in the flickering candlelight of a forbidden anatomy lesson. Think of the town, that chaotic symphony of filth and life, the streets a river of mud and waste, the belief that disease was a miasma, a bad air, a punishment from God was absolute. But after plague had scoured the continent time and time again, a new, practical wisdom began to emerge from the trauma. City councils, for the first time, began to pass ordinances. They ordered the paving of streets, the construction of stone-lined sewers to carry waste away, and the establishment of quarantine houses outside the city walls. These were the first clumsy steps of public health, the first coordinated battle against the invisible enemies that had held humanity hostage for millennia. It was the birth of the idea that a community's health is a shared responsibility. So if today you turn on a tap and clean water flows, if your waste disappears as if by magic, if you can walk down a street without holding a perfumed cloth to your nose, you are living in the quiet, clean legacy of those who first dared to believe that you could fight a plague not just with prayer, but with pavement and pipes. Let your thoughts drift to the miner Thomas coughing his lungs out in the dark, and to the little boy Soot climbing a chimney that would one day be his tomb. Their lives were seen as expendable, their labor a resource to be used up and discarded. But the same forces that organized bakers into guilds eventually began to stir among the workers. They began to whisper of a fair day's wage, of the right not to be maimed or killed for the profit of a master. The first strikes, the first petitions, the first riots over the price of bread. These were the violent birth pangs of the idea that every human life has an intrinsic value, that a person is more than just a pair of hands. The road from their reality to ours is long, bloody, and paved with the bodies of those who dared to ask for more. So if you have a weekend, if your workplace has safety rules, if your child goes to a school instead of up a chimney, you are breathing the air of a world that was purchased for you by the unimaginable suffering and the incredible courage of those who were born with nothing but their own two hands to fight with. And now, let us return to you in your quiet room, a living, breathing contract waiting to be fulfilled. The world you inhabited saw your body as a vessel, your fertility a commodity, your purpose singular and defined. That belief did not vanish overnight. It has taken centuries of slow, grinding, and relentless effort to challenge it. The fight began with a woman who dared to learn to read, then one who dared to write a book under a man's name. It grew with women who argued that a marriage without consent is a form of bondage, and that a mind is as valuable as a womb. The battle for the right to control your own body, to choose your own partner, to decide if and when you will have children, is perhaps the longest and most intimate revolution in human history. It is a quiet war, fought not on battlefields, but in bedrooms, in courtrooms, and in the defiant hearts of millions of women who looked at the life laid out for them and whispered, "No." That whisper, over centuries, has grown into a roar, a sound that is still echoing, still fighting, still carving out a new reality from the stone of the old. So now, let the walls of that castle dissolve. Let the smells of wood smoke and damp stone fade away, replaced by the quiet hum of your own time. The world you have just visited is gone. But it is not gone. It sleeps in the foundations of your cities, in the language you speak, in the fairy tales you tell your children about a princess locked in a tower, waiting. It exists in the deep, instinctual comfort you feel in a clean room, in the unconscious trust you place in your food and your medicine. The brutal realities of that past are the invisible architecture that supports the freedoms of your present. The life of that young girl, her childhood measured by the moon, her future a sealed contract, her body a battlefield, is a ghost that haunts the very notion of progress. Her fears have become your rights. Her powerlessness has become your choice. Her silence has become your voice. Rest now in the world she could never have imagined, a world built upon her quiet, unrecorded sacrifice. Let her story be a soft, distant echo, a final, gentle reminder of the long, dark road that led to the light of your own morning.